been doing this for 105 months now. This is pretty crazy. So, in fact, what's interesting is this is the location that we started. We had our very first movie night here, and we showed 33 Minutes, which was a documentary about how it took 33 minutes for missiles to reach the United States from the Soviet Union and Europe, that kind of thing. And it was really wanting to keep the defense systems up and the reasons why we needed to do so. So that's how we started. So I've asked Rick Layton to start us off, as we always do, with an invocation, and then we will follow that with the pledge. So I just ask you all to stand now, if you would, please. Whoops, John, there we go.
Father, we thank you. Thank you for an opportunity to come together this evening, to spend some time together, Lord, to learn, to seek your face, Lord. Father, we appreciate the blessings that you shower down on us. We ask that you would make us worthy. Help us to stand against the things that are standing against you. Be with us here this evening. Bless this meal. Bless our time together, Lord. Bless this movie. May it enlighten our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Rick?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And I know John Christina's here, and I also asked Rick, I want you all to know that Laurel Durkee, how many of you in the room are familiar with Laurel? Yeah, a heck of a lady. And she passed away this week. And I just thought it was interesting looking at some of the Facebook posts and things that way, as far as things that were being said about Laurel. She really did bless us all with her energy, her patriotic spirit, and her love of God. And I'll never forget, when John first got involved in the political scene, I told him, you go do your thing, I'll do my thing, it's not my deal. And he came back from a JBS meeting that they were having down at Frankie Doodle's, and he came back so excited, and he says, I met the most remarkable woman. And the most remarkable woman that he met was Laurel Durkee. So I asked John Christina, who has known her for a good number of years, and anybody else who would like to sort of say a few words about Laurel, to just share with you the kind of lady she was, because I've got to tell you, she never gave up. She was always working, number one for the Lord and number two for the country. John.
Well, good evening, everyone. I guess I owe it to Laurel Durkee that if it wasn't for...
His microphone's done.
Well, I can't help it.
How's that, better? No, it's not.
Got to do all this stuff here. There you go.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Better.
Okay. Like many people in this room and across Spokane, I came to become involved in the Liberty Movement and in the Republican Party as a result of meeting Laurel Durkee. And I got to tell you, she was just one of the most phenomenal people I've ever met in my life. I was working as a disillusioned Republican, working on Pat Buchanan's campaign in 1996 when I ran into Jim Robinson, who couldn't be here tonight. And he's another influence that got me going in the Liberty Movement. But 1996, I had a chance to meet Laurel. She was working for Clark Hager. Some of you maybe remember Clark Hager. He was the editor of the Spokane Valley Herald, I believe it was, and he also had a small business called the Jobs Company. And I had just been laid off from a bank here in town and looking for work, and that was where I met Laurel. She was the person who was handling the hiring, getting people hired, and I talked to her for the first time, and the first time I met her, I knew she was a character. She was just absolutely just unbelievable. But I learned a lot of things about her during that meeting, and she not only helped me try to find a job, but also she was very good at asking good questions like a good salesperson does, and found out that I was conservative and everything else, and got me involved in a lot of things politically, one of them being the John Birch Society, and another, of course, she got me back into the Republican Party. She said, you can't make changes on the inside, you got to make it on the outside, you got to make them on the inside. So I do will always thank her for that. Over the course of the years from 1996-97, I worked with her closely on JBS issues and a number of other things within the Republican Party. I always found her to be an outstanding person, but one of the things I think was really great was how tenacious she was. If you may remember, if you ever went to the John Birch meetings, you probably got a phone call from her. She was very tenacious. She followed up all the time, and particularly if you were willing to donate money, she was good at getting donations. And I'll never forget that about her. But over the course of time, I just really admired what she did, both in the Liberty Movement and in the Republican Party. It was sadly the last time I saw her, she didn't remember me, and that was really a heartbreaking thing for me because she meant a lot. Like Cecily said, I mean, she was just totally devoted to our Lord and Savior, and I'm just very, very happy that now she and her husband George are sitting with the Lord, and may she rest in peace.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Would you like to say anything, Rick, or anyone else? That just she was just a dynamo. She really was.
When I met Laurel, I was amazed because I was a relative newcomer to the scene here locally, and she had been here for decades. But to see a woman her age with the passion and the energy she had, she loved the Lord and she loved America, and she spent everything she had pursuing what was best for those two things.
Absolutely. So I think she is in a far better place, as John said. Her memory was going, that kind of thing, and it's just time to move on to greener pastures and better places, and that's what she's done. So, but I did want to talk about her because she was very, very special person, and she definitely influenced John in pursuing whatever we want to call this. Okay, we are talking about the 2018 election tonight. And tonight's a special event. It's not really a normal movie night, but an evening to really emphasize the absolute importance of voting this election. Can you believe that there are people out there, you know them, who just aren't going to bother voting this time? And we can't have that happen. We just can't. So we need to get people voting, and we need to have them vote Republican. The elections office will start mailing out the ballots this Friday, which is October 19th, and then the voter pamphlets were mailed out, and you all should have received them by now. So those you should have received in the mail, and if you haven't, they'll be there in a day or two. Now, I would say most all of you in this room are registered to vote. If you are not registered to vote, the deadline for mail-in registrations has passed, and so the deadline for in-person registrations is October 29th, but you need to do that at the elections office. So if you bump into people who have not registered, take them to the elections office, which is at 1033 West Gardner, and have them register. And just so you know, Gardner is a block south of Boone, just west of Monroe. So it's downtown, but that's how we do it here. Okay, we're talking about local recommendations, because people usually are asking, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And normally, we don't say just vote a straight Republican ticket. we talk about the best people and that kind of thing. This is an election that I really do feel that for the good of the country, we need to be voting a straight Republican ticket. However, there is one race with a Republican running against an independent, and that's the sheriff's position. And voting for Scott McClay running as dumpaussie.com might be considered by some as wasting your vote and by others as making a statement. So that race is up to you. As far as the judges go, I don't think any of the Supreme Court judges are really worth voting for. I'm probably just going to undervote on those, which I think is unfortunate, but we have a very liberal based Supreme Court in the state of Washington, and it ain't changing, and they really think they're legislators instead of judges, and it's a shame. Many of our local judges are running unopposed, and we have a couple that are races. In the Spokane Superior Court, we have Cronin and Zembellin, and I like them both. I think they're probably both Democrats. Zembellin was appointed by Inslee. They're both running very hard for the position, and I don't really, we had our judges forum here, heard from both of them. Have any of you out there got anything to say about either one of them? Yeah, yeah, go ahead, loudly.
I just noticed that a lot of Lisa Brown signs, there's also a lot of Cronin signs, like right next to it, so that tells me that because I've actually talked to him.
Yeah, I do believe he's a pretty hardcore Democrat.
Yeah, like I seen him downtown when his doors are right there.
Right. I liked her. She's got great energy. But, what do you do? Spokane County District Court, both Brandt and Johnson are well-qualified candidates. I prefer Johnson, and that's just because of how he handled a question that we had here in this room, and it was about guns. So he was asked a question about guns and gun control and gun this and gun that, and every one of the candidates basically answered the way a judge should, and that they cannot express opinions because, those issues may come up before them as a judge, et cetera, so they've got to be sort of hold their opinions. And what Johnson did was very much like what Larry Haskell did a few years back, and he said, well, I agree with my, everybody here that we can't express our own opinions, but he said, you can tell by my resume that I teach gun safety. I was in the military. I do this and I do that, and I think you have a pretty good idea about how I feel about guns and that kind of. So I'm going, yeah, I like that because he was able to get around the question, let us know where he stood without violating what judges are supposed to do. Thank you. Would you get me some water, please? So obviously, because of what happened to us concerning having James Alsop speaking at our July meeting, we don't have a very high regard for many of the Republicans running, but those are really personal reasons, and I'm not going to go into any of that now. I still want to say that voting Republican is the best thing that we can do right now for the county and for the country. Now on the initiatives, well, now I got a problem. On the initiatives, I've got them there on I-940, and this goes against what the Spokane County Republicans have said, etc. But I want to read this to you. This is a rebuttal of argument against. And you've got to all remember, I-940 is about the police enforcement, that type of thing. Since 1986, state law has shielded officers who unnecessarily kill people Now I have lots of water.
I know you have lots of water. Just take a break a second. Have somebody sing a song. Would somebody like to sing a song? Give her a break.
So what you got to know is Washington ranks 5th in the nation in the number of deaths from police use of force. Thank you. Would you open it for me? And so you got to keep that in mind as you're talking about I-940. So since here, I got two hands. Since 1986, state law has shielded officers who unnecessarily kill people by requiring proof of malice or evil intent, a subjective standard virtually impossible to prove. Washington is the only state with this standard. Since 2005, police have killed over 300 Washingtonians, up to a third showing signs of mental illness. Only one officer was charged and acquitted. Washington's families deserve an objective standard, independent investigations, and better training, improvements that will increase community safety. Law enforcement community is very against this initiative, but I believe that we do need to be taking a closer look at how they're trained and what happens. I would say vote yes on I-940. You do know that the legislature will probably revise it after it gets approved, but I do think that our police deserve to handle these cases in a different manner than what we've been doing when you consider, where we rank in the nation, the numbers of people that are killed, the number of people that are killed with mental illness. And the one thing I don't like is that the more sort of restrictions we put on law enforcement, we might be dissuading people from joining law enforcement, and that's not a good thing. But we do need to have trust and belief, and that's something that sort of is lacking in Washington State, and then of course in Spokane County with some of the cases that we've had. So read I-940 for and against in your voter's pamphlet, make your own decision, but that's how I really feel about it. Of course, 1631 is really a carbon tax. Check into that carefully. You'll find that many of the companies that are the more large polluters are exempted from the whole thing. And it's just another way of collecting more money, and it will end up costing you money. 1634 is that idea of having no tax on our groceries, and the bad thing about it is that many of the companies that were funding the yes vote and things that way, or your soda companies and things that way, that didn't like what happened in Seattle. But we do need to be able to protect and keep that status of not paying taxes on our groceries. So I'd say yes on 1634. And then 1639, regarding increased gun regulations, is definitely a no. And I was going to ask Ben Carpenter to talk at our open mic time about 1639, but Ben is the NRA representative for our northwestern states. And so Ben, would you come on up and talk now and tell us about 1639, because it is a horrendous initiative. Is it all turned on? Ben Carpenter.
It is awful indeed. And hello, my name's Ben Carpenter.
Ben, if you stand here, then we can see you.
All right. I tend to wander. And we got Rusty Draper here as well, who's got T-shirts in the back, but as well as some yard signs I didn't realize he still had, but because I ran fresh out a couple weeks ago. So
we want y'all to take one home and get them up in your yard.
That's right. So I work for the NRA, specifically with the Institute for Legislative Action, which is the political arm with the NRA, fighting here. It's pretty much holding the line, fighting against bad gun bills, bad initiatives, protecting pro-gun elected officials and candidates. This year, really the focal point for the whole country is watching Washington State right now, because this is the only initiative on the ballot nationally. And so it's kind of a unique opportunity to lead a big no campaign. We have 2 other hired employees that are working on the ground in Western Washington, and then I just moved up here myself. I grew up in Colville, up in Stevens County, and just moved back to Chewelah, Washington after spending some time in Oregon. But specifically with 1639, how many of you are aware of that initiative, by the way? Well, gosh, I guess I could go home then, huh? So, with 1639, we battled it out even before it was on the ballot. We sued the Secretary of State over the signature gathering process, which was shady as I could get at. How many of you saw signature gatherers at your local Walmart or Lowe's? Yeah, they were everywhere, and I heard so many crazy stories about what they were doing. But not only that, they had incentives to gather signatures. I heard they were getting up to $10 a pop per signature. So there was incentive just to make things up, throw it in. But that wasn't the worst of it. What they did was, according to Washington State elections law, you have to have a full and readable copy of the initiative. But this thing being 30 pages long, they managed to cram all 30 pages to the backside of one signature sheet. I'm talking like size 2 font. I mean, you couldn't read it with a magnifying glass. And on top of that, they were the first, I think, to ever mess up putting strike-throughs in there to show what part of the current statute would change and what would be the same, what would be added. You couldn't distinctly tell what was being added from the initiative and what was already established law. And nobody, to my knowledge, has made that mistake. And when you spend $4 million to get this thing right, it seems a little disingenuous, to put it lightly. So we sued the Secretary of State over it. This Thurston County Superior Court judge over in Olympia actually sided with us, ruled on striking it down, saying try again next time, because they didn't follow the rules. But unfortunately, the state Supreme Court chose to ignore the law, take more of an activist role, and then they reversed the decision, putting it on the ballot again. And that's talking with like 68, 69 days until the election. And so we've hustled hard. Thankfully, we started lining our things up, assuming the worst case scenario, which ended up being what happened, putting it back on the ballot. We were already making calls and knocking on doors, and we're continuing to do so as we ramp up for Friday, when you should receive your ballot in the mail. At that point, we're going to switch over to our Get Out the Vote efforts, in which we'll be reaching out to folks who we already identified as being opposed to the initiative, and making sure that ballot makes it all the way from the dining room table all the way to the mailbox. I'll do whatever it takes. If I got to go over there and personally deliver that sucker, I will. But basically, what this initiative would do, if it were to pass, God forbid, is it would define every semi-automatic rifle in the state of Washington as an assault rifle, a politicized term that don't mean squat. So not only would it do that, it would raise the age limit to be able to purchase or possess one from 18 to 21. There's no exemption for active duty service members or veterans. Beyond that, it also would impose a 10-day holding period, so for a new purchase or a transfer, as well as a $25 registration. So you're talking, if you want to loan your gun out to a buddy, maybe he wants to check it out, see if he wants to get one himself, you're talking 20 days and $50 before it comes around full circle again. And on top of that, it gets even worse. It essentially criminalizes self-defense by requiring you to keep your firearm and ammunition separately locked at all times when not in use. And they also don't even really describe what would be considered safe storage. Just like they have other components that are just as bad too, that go even deeper, that are more subtle. They strip out educating people about our statewide firearm preemption statute that requires the law be uniform no matter where you are in the state. I could be up in Colville, or I could be out in Forks or Sequim or Vancouver, anywhere, and the law should be the same. But they want to repeal that, and they tried last year to roll it back to allow cities like Seattle to have stricter gun policies, which Seattle seems to do regardless of the law. But what happens is you have over 2,000 jurisdictions across the state of Washington. To imagine them all having different gun policies, you wouldn't know whether you're on the right or the wrong side of the law, just depending on where you're traveling. On top of that, it opens up your medical information, allowing the state to access it annually to see whether or not you're still qualified to possess that semi-automatic rifle. And you know, I've done a whole circuit of workshops. I did almost 24 of them. And one thing, I had veterans in Issaquah tell me, well, listen, like, I've been diagnosed with PTSD. My family, my doctor, everybody around me knows I'm not a risk to myself or anybody else. But who's to say that the state examining what medication you're on is going to think the same way? And that, I don't have an answer, because there's a lot of things that aren't even defined. They don't even have a way to pay for all of this stuff, because they have an unfunded mandate for the state patrol to sit and run these new background checks that are verbatim to what NICS already does federally. So it's a redundant process that wastes time and money, and really it's just all about holding your firearms for an extended period of time for no reason. So I encourage you all to vote no, but on top of that, I encourage you guys to get involved. We have a lot of volunteer activities that doesn't cost you a thing, and it's extremely effective. You can't replicate face-to-face interaction with anything else on television or the radio. You may have heard our radio ads, and those are great, but to be able to touch people in a way that they know that it's somebody locally in their community that they can identify with, that goes a really long ways. Heck, even on my drive down here to talk today, I talked to folks on the phone urging folks to vote no the whole way here. And each voter is going to make a difference this year. If we turn out people on the east side of the mountains, we can make a difference. We've got 2.3 million people over here. There's a lot of votes we can take away from King County if we just turn out.
That's right.
Yakima was the anchor last election with, I think, 28.1% turnout. We can do better than that. And we have in the past. In 676, back in the 90s, we were able to roll back the trigger lock initiative that they put out. We succeeded in that. And so after 594, we should recognize elections have consequences, and we need to get out and vote, talk to your neighbors, your hunting buddies, your family members, everybody, and urge them to vote no on 1639. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I strongly know that voters will come out and vote no on 1639. This is your Second Amendment rights, guys. And when you look at this thing, it is disastrous. And there is no way that anybody should be voting yes on it. So get your signs, get your T-shirts, do what you can. But this is definitely one of those things that we've got to rally around. Okay, so, you know, here's where we're standing. And to many of us here in this room, the hate Trump mania just doesn't make a darn bit of sense. I mean, you're going, really? I personally think he's the best president of my lifetime. But you know, there are people, possibly even people here, who don't like Trump. They wish he wouldn't tweet as much as he does, or they complain that he isn't presidential enough, or that he just doesn't act in a presidential manner, or that his moral character is not up to their standards. That's okay. But to me, it's not enough to not vote or to vote Democrat. We have got to vote. We've got to vote Republican. We have got to support this president and the agenda that is taking place in this country and changing it. We all need to unite and save this country, because that's how important this election is. If you want mob rule, disregard for our Constitution, disrespect for our tried and true system of selecting judges and passing legislation, then that's what you're going to get if the Democrats win a majority. We cannot let it happen. So now more than ever, the way business is done in Washington, D.C. has to be changed. You've seen what a business approach to running this country accomplishes. We need to support Trump by voting Republican. So I don't care if you don't like his tweeting, or you don't like this, or you don't like that, vote Republican. So let's talk a little bit about what's at stake and why this midterm election is so different. So when you look at these 10 reasons to vote Republican, these were put out by Ben Shapiro. Now, if you know Ben Shapiro, he's not necessarily a Trump person. But when you look at the courts, I mean, we just talked about the Washington State Supreme Court ruling the way they did on 1639. It had nothing to do with law. It had nothing to do with the Washington State Constitution. It had to do with their political agenda. That is not what we want in our courts. Absolutely not. The investigations. These investigations are ridiculous. They're going on and on and on. They aren't doing much of anything other than spending a whole ton of money. And if you vote Democrat, that's all you're going to be getting is a ton more investigations. Impeachment. I mean, they're not only talking about impeaching Trump, they're talking about impeaching Kavanaugh. I mean, crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. The economy. How many agree that the economy is doing way better now than it's been for a good number of years? Foreign policy. Are you proud to be an American right now? Are you proud of how we stand up for what America is with our United Nations people throughout the country? I mean, throughout the world. Can you imagine any other of the Republican candidates that ran against Trump sitting down and even talking with North Korea? Absolutely not. I mean, we're living in history. I mean, this is historical. We have an extremely polarizing culture war going on right now. If you do anything that they can slander you with, as far as talking about you're a white supremacist or a white nationalist, they're going to do it. And what in the heck are you going to do? What we need to do is just not acknowledge it. And I wish I hadn't resigned. I shouldn't have, but I did. And I mean, this is just wrong. So the culture war is ridiculous. Religious liberty. I mean, when there's a piece of paper, 4 pages, actually 8 pages on your table, and when you really look into some of the things that Trump has done as far as religious liberties in this country, you're going, oh, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. I mean, because so much of the attention for Trump is he's out there tweeting. Look at that shiny object over there, and all this other stuff is happening, and there's a tremendous amount that he's accomplished. Social media. Do you think that the pressure would stay on Facebook and Twitter, etc., if the Democrats are in power? Absolutely not. And that's pretty scary. And then you just look at the media complex. And then what have we experienced this last month with mob rule? Have you ever seen people in the United States acting the way that they have been acting? It's crazy. And I really do, I'm hoping that it totally turns off most Americans, but you're going, this is just, not what this country is about. So it's, those are our reasons to vote Republican. And if we want to keep some semblance of what this country is about, following our Constitution, etc., we really need to be on guard because the Democrats are totally opposed to our democratic republic. Now, if the Democrats win, we lose legislative power. And that means the power to make and unmake laws. So if you don't like if you like the tax cuts, you're going to see those unmade. If you like the idea that some of the Obamacare fixes that we have been able to get done, like the unfunded mandate and things, if you like those are going to come back again, that kind of things. So it's not just the idea of making laws, because we all know that if the Senate stays Republican and Trump remains president, which he will, because impeachment wouldn't work even if they got it going, all he could veto. So they're not going to be making laws, but you can really look at what they're going to try to undo as far as what we've done. So if the Democrats take the House, you're going to be looking at far more investigations. I understand there's 50 subpoenas for different records and this and that the Democrats have put up that the Republicans have squashed. It'll just be nothing but investigation after investigation after investigation. I'm sick and tired of the Russian investigation, collusion and whatever, and obstruction of justice and whatever. How many of you are sick and tired of it? You know, and so you're going to get more of that. You're going to get a lot more of the drama that you saw during the Kavanaugh hearings, and definitely the impeachment proceedings. Legislatively, probably next to nothing will happen, but every bill that Trump vetoes is going to be a quiver in their, an arrow in their quiver as far as being able to have talking points against him in 2020. So it's definitely not a good situation. If they take the House, you're going to have Jerry Nadler would replace Goodlatte as the chair of the Judiciary, and he's going to quickly focus on investigating Trump's business profits using a 1924 law that's seldom ever been used, that authorizes the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee to request anyone's tax returns. He also would reopen the Russian investigation and rehash the Comey firing and start gathering evidence toward impeaching Trump. Schiff, that nemesis of Devin Nunes, would reopen the House investigation of the Russian election interference, probably impanel a special committee to focus on Russian matters. Don't you all know that Russia has been fooling around in our elections and other countries' elections for years? This isn't a new thing. And yet we're just making it a huge, excuse me, the gentleman over in the corner needs, yeah, super. So, you know, Russia is nothing new. And I don't think there are too many Americans that really think it is, but it's certainly nothing that just happened because Trump was running for president. That Oversight and Government Reform Committee is the most muscular investigative body in the House. Now, y'all know who Elijah Cummings is, right? Can you imagine him as chair of that? Right now, the Dems have more than 50 subpoena requests that have been denied by committee Republicans, ranging from the administration of security clearances at the White House to chartered jet travel by cabinet officials to Justice Department documents related to its decision not to defend the Affordable Care Act in court. So just a myriad of things that you're just going, really? We need to know about that? So what you're really looking at is just investigations and more investigations, and they will all be focused on taking down the Trump administration. Now, if Republicans keep the House, politically, we'll sort of be in the same position we are, other than hopefully with the number of Republicans retiring, which I believe are 40, we can replace them with people that actually will support the Trump administration. And I really believe it would embolden Trump to do more and really push the House to be doing more to support him. Legislatively, more deregulation, maybe more tax cuts, and maybe another run at repealing the Affordable Care Act. So, you know, when we talk about that Affordable Care Act, it was just so sad when Roberts ruled the way he did in the Supreme Court, because the most difficult thing to do is to take back an entitlement after it's been issued. And I think we've seen that in that they just don't have the guts to do that type of thing. Obamacare actually costs $2.7 trillion instead of the below $1 trillion that they told us that it would cost. And it adds $826 billion to the national debt. The compliance costs for government agencies involve tens of thousands of workers, including hundreds and thousands of bureaucrats from the IRS that gobble up at least 128 million hours annually. 128 million hours spent by our government agencies working, you know, and enforcing the regulations that are left with Obamacare. That's huge. And so something does need to be done about it. But like I said, taking entitlements away after they're in place seems to be an area that either party just will not touch. And it's got to be. We have got to look at Social Security, we've got to look at Medicare, we've got to look at Medicaid, and we've got to look at Obamacare, because it doesn't work. And I don't know when, you know, the deadline is, when they stop juggling everything around. Maybe I'm fortunate to be the age I am, but there are a lot of you in this room that are a lot younger than I am, and I really don't like the aspects of what's going to happen when this whole house of cards caves in, and you're going, how do we pay for this stuff? So, what did I do? I did something. So we're looking at the upcoming issues. And really, what do you see? So if the Democrats win this election in the House, what do you see as far as immigration goes? What do you see happening with DACA? I mean, really think about it. Think about what you're looking at. Healthcare reform. We just talked about the cost of Obamacare, but it'll probably end up being Medicare for all, which, guys, isn't the greatest medical system that you want anywhere, and the cost is just not going to be what you want. Gun control. Do you really, I mean, Ben just talked to you about what we're facing in Washington State. Do you want the Democrats in Washington, D.C. writing gun issues for the whole country? I mean, this is not good. You know, you're talking about tax cuts if the Republicans stay in, but tax increases if the Democrats come along. Environmental issues. Trump has really done some great work in reducing regulation that really doesn't harm our environment, but has really helped as far as moving things along and not having some of the ridiculous environmental issues that we have, like endangered rabbits and tortoises and other kinds of things. And but the environmental issues are something that the Democrats just hang on to, so you're going to be looking at more of that. Trade. A lot of people are a little bit upset about the tariffs, but when you really look at how our trade has been handled in this country for 30 years and nothing being done about it, I hope that you're learning that, you know, the brakes have to be put on this, and I really think there's not another person in the world that would have handled it other than President Trump. And I do believe that it will pretty well smooth out within the next year. Farmers are complaining, but they set up they have a bill that makes funds available to make them whole for any problems they have because of losses, because of the trade war kinds of things. So, and he's opened up so many more markets for the farmers that you're just going, you know, come on, let's see this through. And the way I look at it is look at the darn labels on what you're buying. And if it says made in China, don't buy it. Stop shopping at Walmart. And I'll pay a couple dollars more for everything or more if it's made in the USA versus putting up with this crap that we've put up with for 30 years. We have got to put America first. And then you look at the judicial appointments. Can you believe the circus that we all watched this last little bit? I mean, that was probably the most discouraging, disgusting performance that I've seen. And these people are supposed to be lawmakers. They're supposed to love this country. They're supposed to be representing us. They're supposed to be doing what's best for the country. That's wrong. And not one of those people should be reelected. Not good.
They're saying that they're going to overload the Supreme Court to wipe out the court.
Well, they can't overload the Supreme Court unless they win, and Trump can veto. But they also want to increase the Supreme Court to 11 versus 9 so they can get more in. I mean, they have all kinds of crazy ideas. Just need to keep the Democrats away from Washington, D.C. Got to do that. Voter enthusiasm, we're being told, is increasing amongst the Republicans since the Kavanaugh situation. We need to keep it that way. And the thing that I worry about is because we don't have the protests and it's being televised nationally and all that, and things being brought to the attention of people, that maybe some of that enthusiasm will die. So it's up to you guys to really be talking this up and having people understand why it's so important. Number one, to vote. Number two, to vote Republican. Because if what they demonstrated for us during the Kavanaugh hearings is what they think of this country, how they respect our system and our government, we do not want them in office. They've got to be kept out. Just got to be. A lot of people are saying this is a referendum on Trump. And what you can see from this graph is that the resist group seems to be stronger than the results group. And remember, there are less Republicans than Democrats. So the big question here is, where do the independents line up? Where do the moderate Democrats line up? Because I know that moderate Democrats had to have been terribly embarrassed by the performance that they've been watching. So what are they going to do? Are they going to stay home and not vote? Will they vote Republican? What are they going to do? So it's really, we've got to beef it up. Here in our state, the last time a Republican senator held office in Washington state was 2001. So do any of you remember who that was? Come on, speak it up. Slade Gorton. And he was defeated in 2001 by Cantwell by 2,229 votes. Can you believe that? 2,229 votes. That is the importance of getting the vote out. We've got to do it. Ben was talking about what we have on the east side of the mountains, and if we would stand up and vote, we can win this darn thing. So gaining one Republican Senate seat for Washington state would be absolutely huge for all of us. She is an excellent candidate. She's campaigning hard, and she will be debating Cantwell in Spokane on Saturday. It's sort of a first come, first serve situation as far as getting in. The doors open at 2, but probably the line forms at 8. But the debate will be televised. But this lady, I feel that she has a huge possibility of winning. Brian?
I've heard that a lot of the events that are going on, that the Democrats are actually coming in and trying to take the big blocks of the tickets and get them in. So
if you go to Eventbrite, they aren't even giving you tickets at this point, and it is a first come, first serve. So But the deal is that we need to know who she is. You know what I love about Republicans is they're quiet. They don't answer pollsters. They don't, stand out in the streets and demonstrate and wave things and all that kind of stuff. They're pretty quiet and they vote. And that's what I like about them. They're not confrontations. There's not any other thing. And so Susan Hutchison definitely needs our support. I really feel, she was a news anchor on the West Side. She's well known on the West Side. That's where most of her efforts have been going. And darn, it would just be absolutely incredible. And, she confronted Ted Cruz in the elevator at the Republican National Convention after Cruz tried to do his upset of not allowing the delegates to vote for Trump and all that kind of stuff, and just chewed him out publicly on that elevator in front of quite a few people. She is definitely a Trump supporter. So, pretty cool lady. And on this race, if people don't know now that Lisa Brown is a diehard socialist, we need to keep her far away from Washington, D.C. Probably to be nice, I call her a diehard socialist. She's a communist, and she is not representative of Eastern Washington, and she's just got to be defeated. And I would love to be able to just place a big old communist across all her signs, but, I'd get caught. But, what do you do? I'd be on the again. So I did put a couple, like I said, there are 8 pages about tired of winning on your tables. I don't print out enough for everybody because, it's sort of discouraging when you're going home and you're picking up all this paper and throwing it out. But those of you that are interested, do take a look at it, take it home if you want to. It's pretty incredible. The positive trends and statistics that have been created by this administration, we need to be proud of because we all voted, well, I didn't because I wasn't a citizen yet, but we all voted for Trump. There are a lot of things listed there that didn't get a lot of coverage. Some that stood out for me, you're going to find under worker development, the worker development programs that are there. When you look under border security, it's absolutely amazing what ICE has done. And then you ask, why in the world do we want to eliminate ICE? This is just nutty jobs. It's a very interesting list. So like I said, those of you that are interested, please take it with you. Check it out. Check them. Make sure that what I'm giving you is true and accurate. And we have just got to keep this administration in power because it's doing so much for us. And I do want to read on those ICE statistics because it was, I'm going, wow. This is just enforcement and removal. Arrested more than 127,000 aliens with criminal convictions or charges responsible. Over 76,000 with dangerous drug offenses, more than 48,000 with assault offenses, more than 11,000 with weapon offenses, more than 5,000 with sexual assault offenses, more than 2,000 with kidnapping offenses, and over 1,800 with homicide offenses. This is what we're putting up with in this country. And I'd love to ask these Me Too ladies, they probably, if it was an illegal immigrant that assaulted them, they'd probably say it was okay. I don't know, this is just crazy. But not a good thing. So I think it's a very interesting thing there of all the accomplishments that have happened under this administration, and so many of them you don't even hear about. And that, again, is how I refer to, we got the shiny object over here, we got tweet, 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 oh, well, look what he's doing, he said that, I can't believe he said that, and then we have all of this other stuff happening. Smart man, very smart man. The other thing that I put on your tables is a poem, and I have a typo in it, I apologize, called My Sacred Ballot. And I'm just going to read it very, very quickly. The blood of free men stains my ballot sheet. Whatever others may do, I shall not carelessly make my mark. I vote not because I can, but because I must. Those who died for this, my voice in my government, had a right to expect that I would use it wisely, honestly, and courageously. They did not die that blind partisans or the reckless might make a game of free elections. Only my secret heart knows whether I justify the definition of voter as they wrote it in the reddening sand. If I love my country as they did, I question my qualifications again and again. I carefully study the issues and candidates to determine not what is best for me, but for my country. I will not be confused or deceived by propaganda, slogans, or histrionics. I shield my eyes to the glitter of personalities, purge my mind of passion and prejudice, and search diligently for the hidden truth. I must be free of all influence save conscience and justice. I vote as if my ballot alone decided the contest. I may lose my preference, but I will not throw away my sacred vote. For within the booth I hold in my humble hand the living proxy of all my country's honored dead. Your vote is important. It is a sacred honor, and treat it that way. It is, really think of our country. And, I sort of said I didn't vote for Trump. So this is a story because I have new people here. I'm from Canada, lived here years and years and years with a green card. So I was legal, followed the laws, the whole bit, didn't do anything to get into trouble. And we were talking, John and I were the campaign chairs for Spokane County for Donald Trump. And I made a comment at one of our meetings that if the American people were smart enough to elect Trump as president, I would become a citizen. So I became a citizen this last year. Whoops, went too far. So the Democrats' agenda is becoming very, clearer every day. They favor a living constitution. And what that means is that it can be interpreted really based on whatever ideas are trendy at the time. The Constitution was just written by a bunch of old white men, so why pay any attention to it? They want to replace the electoral college system electing our president with a national popular vote. And that would result in the population of major cities in the United States would determine the results. There would be no more voice for the flyover country. There would be no more voice for you and me. It would be gone. And of course, immigration laws would be weakened rather than strengthened. So in other words, America's foundation would be destroyed and our republic would be gone forever. The Republicans must retain the House and Senate this election, guys, and it is up to you. If you could vote twice, do it, but you can't. So vote once and take somebody else, and help them with their ballot. It's like if your kid's ballot comes to your house and they don't pay any attention to it, help them out. So gear up, because campaigning is going to start for that 2020 election as soon as this election is over. So it's going to be crazy. Don't have a lot in upcoming events. There is the Friday Morning Breakfast Club. They meet every Friday at Something Else Deli at 7 o'clock on Friday mornings. And then the documentary on Lavoy Finicum, Dead Man Talking, is going to be shown November 29th at La Belle Vie. And that is a documentary that I think many of you, John has something to say?
Yeah, Rick, I don't think you're going to cover, I just found out today, but on Thursday evening, Rob Chase is hosting Fred Kelly Grant, who's an expert on communication, and he's going to be at the North Spokane Library from 7 o'clock or eventually about 9 o'clock, talking about the impact of the Vista Hydro 1 sale and how the coordination process works. So I apologize for the late last minute notice. The president got sick, and we finally got him to come on board. So it'll be Thursday evening, North Spokane Library at 7 o'clock.
Okay, North Spokane Library is at Hawthorne and Division, just a teeny bit east of Division on Hawthorne. 7 o'clock, Thursday. Yeah, you guys have got to really get involved in this Hydro One sale. It's not a done deal yet, and you've got one elected official in this county, one, who is doing anything to really stand up for the citizens of this area, and that's Rob Chase. Rob is running for county commissioner against Mary Cooney. Mary Cooney and Al French, as far as I'm concerned, are a cabal. They just work together and with Ozzy, and you've got to get Rob Chase in that position. But he is about the only we've got two politicians in Spokane County that are extremely unusual. You've got Rob Chase, who does not walk to anybody else's drummer other than his own. He does what he feels is best for the people of Spokane County, and he's not going to be influenced by anybody other than his own conscience and talking to people and things that way. The other person is Matt Shea. And Matt Shea, the reason that they really are so against him is, again, because he cannot be controlled. And so there are two that we should be extremely, extremely proud of. Support them, and just understand that we're so fortunate to have them. Matt's probably the most influential legislator that we have in Olympia, and got to keep him there. So Rob Chase for commissioner.
Can I interrupt a minute?
Etc. Go ahead.
Yeah, clear your throat. I spoke with Rob earlier today via text, and he's asked me to videotape this fellow's presentation, and he told me in the text that it would be Thursday at the Argonne Library. And I noticed that he wanted to invite Caper, and I noticed that Caper on your slide says it's over in Otis Orchards.
I don't have Caper up there, John.
You do?
That's hidden, thank you.
Oh, it is hidden. It's got the little gray area.
Sorry.
Okay, but also, John, what you're saying is what I would just encourage you to do, everybody really needs to learn about this Hydro One, because when your electric bill goes from $150 to $450 or $500 a month, and you think, my God, what am I going to do? It's too late. We've screwed up. So we've got to say no to this thing. But to John's statement, I just think, look at Rob Chase's Facebook page, do whatever, but verify where this is at, because I don't know. I'm told it's at the Argonne Library.
I have an email, I'll look it up.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
maybe you
John.
could give him a call while we're finishing up tonight. They didn't even know about it, right? And they both, Al French and Mary Cooney, both accepted $100,000 contributions from Avista.
For advertising.
So, you know.
I love Al's quote. Al's quote was, gee, it really shocked me. I had no idea.
So, yeah. So anyway, we are going to, we have open mic. Is there anybody that has anything they want to say tonight before we start the movie? And then we'll get into the movie. So any important announcements? John has told us about the Hydro One meeting on Thursday at either the Argonne Library or the North Spokane Library. Anything else going on that we need to know about?
Go for it. You're all set.
Come on up here.
Just go up front.
This is Roxanne.
Hey, Roxanne.
And
Come on up, Roxanne. You first. Ladies first. Ladies first.
Okay. I just wanted to let you guys know at the Spokane City Council this coming Monday, they're going to be voting, and they're going to be voting on if they should block Border Patrol from doing sweeps of bus and train stations. And so if you would like to come, it would be great, because aren't the police supposed to protect us?
yeah, that has so much to do with our sanctuary city situation within Spokane. And so if they can't go to the bus stations, what in the heck are you know, it's frustrating. Brian.
Hi, everyone. Aren't we blessed by having Donald Trump as president right now?
Amen.
Can I get a round of applause? Yes, yes. Yes for Donald Trump. I don't know about the rest of you. My business profits have gone up by over 20% just almost immediately after he was elected into office. I've been blessed, and I feel that I've been taking that opportunity to donate a little bit heavier to the candidates that really are going to make a difference, and I've done that. And also, you know, like I've noticed too, with these events, you know, when I go to a movie, and if I see a movie that's put up and made by Hollywood or whatever, I think Jeff has a term, Hellywood, for it or something like that. But if I were the type that was going to go see a demonic type movie, I think that the general admission price is up over $10 a person now. And you know, the concessions here, they make out well. I think this is a wonderful venue, and I want to thank players and spectators for allowing the opportunity of using this venue for tonight. But really, I'm just kind of doing a pledge for maybe we can, and I'm including myself in this. We need to support the people that really make a difference. If we didn't have organizations like Northwest Grassroots, a lot of times we wouldn't know as much about what's really going on. And John and Cecily really give us a really good, they're providing such a good service for us here, and they have for years. Yes, thank you, yes. So I'm just going to, I'm going to go ahead and donate some money into them tonight. I suggest they have other donation jars around here. Maybe just consider throwing in a, you know, if you're gonna spend $10 to go see a lousy movie, you know, we're getting some real information here and something that we can really, that's gonna bring blessings to our heart too. I mean, we're gonna get blessings by actually viewing these type of and coming to these type of events and learning more. Another thing too, I just wanted to hit on real quick. You know, people talk a lot about free trade and the the media really focused on, and I think it's probably just because of Lisa Brown and the Democrats, they really focused on how was it affecting the farmers. Well, I grew up on a farm over in George Washington, you know, so I've lived that life. But I also had a brother that built high-end audio amplifiers for audiophile around the world. And his base, his entry-level amplifiers started at $10,000, and he went all the way up to, well, he sold a couple for $400,000. Now, when these amplifiers sold over to Japan, the tariff for our American electronics going over to Japan is 100%. So I remember helping him build an $80,000 amplifier, and a set of amplifiers, I should say. And when they went over to Japan, the gentleman actually paid $160,000 for them. Now, conversely, that same tariff percentage that we have for Japanese electronics coming into the U.S. is only 4%. Okay, and it's not just Japan we're talking about. I also had the opportunity to help him build a $10,000 amplifier for a gentleman in Canada, and that went at 34%. And conversely, the tariffs coming into the U.S. are 5%. So American manufacturing has greatly been getting, excuse my language, we've been getting screwed for a long time. And the only reason why the Democrats are really focusing on so much, and the liberal newspapers, of course, focusing on the farmers so much is because, well, that's one industry that it's affecting, but you know, they don't want to give the converse. They don't want to give the actual, they don't want to actually tell you how it's helping American manufacturing out there. So that's just my little tidbit that I can include. Maybe, you know, you can pass this along to some of your other friends or something, or if they have any questions about the tariff. But once again, thank you, John and Cecily, so much for everything you do. I will just put this out here. I'll pass it around, but yeah, thank you so much for giving me this time to speak.
Thanks, Brian. Now we have Rusty Draper here wants to say something. I have a feeling it's probably about 1639, but we'll find out. Right up to your mouth.
Hitler took the guns away before he killed the Jews. Don't forget that, because that's where we're headed if we allow this crap to continue. We have got to vote no. And we've got to get our friends to vote no. And we've got to get our neighbors that aren't registered to get registered and vote no. And we need to go and help Ben and help the other people here that are contacting and doorbelling and knocking to get people to vote no. If we allow this to pass, we are on a path to destruction. I hate to be gloom and doom, but I'm not. I'm looking at what reality is, and I can see what this thing does. I have some examples with me. I'm not going to take the time here, but I can show you in the back later what it's going to do to us. On this sheet here that we passed out, on the bottom of it, on the back side, it has Ben's phone number, and it also has his email. We're going to be phoning and doorbelling. The phone calls are going to start on the 19th of October through the 5th. And they're going to be at Double Eagle Pond on the 19th, and then they're going to be at Sharpshooters after that. And if you let Ben know in advance, gotta get wound up sometimes, sorry about that. If you let him know in advance, he'll even come up with a phone and a headset if you don't have one that you can use. These two handouts that I made here, I took off of the publication and the law, and this one here goes into all of the examples of the destruction that regulation is going to have, that law is going to have. And I didn't pass these out, but they're on the back table over there. It's a little one to go in your back pocket in case you've got a short memory like I do. You don't have to commit this thing to memory, but if you take this little page here, you can tell people what the items are and the devastation that it's going to have. So if you want to, before you leave tonight, give Ben your name and number and tell him when you can come and help doorbell, or tell him when you can come and help canvass, because we need to make sure that this doesn't pass. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. So Rusty will be by the back table, and he'll make sure that you all take something home with you.
Oh, yellow shirts, they were all committed, but if we can get 12 ordered and paid for tonight, in 6 days I'll have them for you.
Okay. And Randy Mace wants to say a couple words. He told me he'd take 2 minutes and no more.
Okay, hello folks. I'm Randy Mace. I'm the commander of your local militia, 63rd, and give you a little update on what we're doing across the state with all the militia groups, 3%ers and patriot groups. West Side and East Side are working together. Starting actually last weekend, we're taking signs and physically going down on the heavy traffic streets and get out on the corners and hold these signs up there with our American flags and get people's attention in a personal way, and getting out there the way the Democrats do, get down on the streets with their signs. This is something that we all got to get behind. Look at your friends and neighbors and stuff and try and get them to participate and do the same, because this midterm and this vote here in Washington State is extremely important on the constitutional rights of all citizens of the United States. The other thing we got to add to these signs is Save America, vote GOP, and get out there and physically get on the streets. Another one we can put on there is vote GOP or lose America. You know, that's what we're looking at. The Trump agenda is dead if we lose one House or the Senate. It's extremely important. So pass the word to everybody else to actually take a little time, weekend or evening or whatever, and go down on the streets, hold these signs up with our American flag.
Thank you.
And Cecily, if I can just, so I talked to John Christina, looked at his email, looked at my text, and so it is the library on the north side off of Hastings. 7 p.m. If you don't understand this Avista Hydro One deal, you need to make that happen because the vote's coming up and that's critical.
All right, so it is movie time. We have Trump at War.
This is for anyone who may be taken aback by my comments. I don't really care if you are. I hope you are. For years now, it has been, 2.5 years since he officially entered the political arena.
Donald Trump, congratulations. You have made this country a land where sleaze is not just the language of politics, but the political environment itself.
His supporters made excuses, continue to make excuses for him. You also might want to do some self-examination. What does it say about you that no matter what, you continue to make excuses for this man, for his vile behavior, this sort of vile behavior? Doesn't that make you just as bad, if not worse, than him? And for all of you who over the last few years have uttered that tired, lazy, uninformed, uneducated, ignorant response of calling me and others who point out racist behavior racists, you know what you can go do?
Fuck Trump.
We don't want to fucking hear from you. Get the fuck away from us. We don't want to fucking hear from you. We got nothing to fucking say to you. Get the fuck away from our
Get out of his face.
We don't want anything to do with you. You're a fucking fash.
It's fucking over. The discourse is over. We have argued, we have pondered. The discourse is over.
We're not going to be polite anymore. We're going to fight back.
We begin with several developing stories here on a Friday night. First, the violent and bloody clashes outside a Donald Trump event.
Violent scuffles ensued, all of this becoming a part of a pattern of unrest fueled by antagonism and divisive rhetoric.
Kelly Burke is charged with disorderly conduct. Investigators say she was screaming obscenities at a teenage girl, all because she was wearing a T-shirt supporting President Donald Trump.
You're a piece of shit, bro. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Why did he get his head taken by somebody who dislikes Donald Trump? Are you talking to the president?
You ain't support shit, nigga.
Just make that hat great again and burn it right in the trash.
Look, nonviolence has worked, and we are going to try to stop this.
What we've got to do is fight in Congress, fight in the courts, fight in the streets.
Donald Trump's campaign is surrounded by controversy this morning after a weekend of chaos and violence.
It is a result of the culture of Trump supporters.
We need a revolution.
Are you suggesting that the entire Trump vote was racist and by racists?
I think, yes.
I'm not going to.
I don't think that's a Nazi.
I'm not a Nazi. What are you doing, man? Hey.
The people of color who are attacked by their fellow citizens who feel emboldened to be publicly racist. Because the president is. His supporters, what does it say about you?
A terrifying night of violence as Donald Trump supporters were attacked by an angry mob waiting for them outside a Trump rally.
This guy likes sucker punch in the back of the head.
You also might want to do some self-examination.
Another fist fight's about to break out right now. Trump supporter is getting pummeled right now.
One Trump supporter got knocked around when a fight broke out.
Homeless woman confronted as she showed her support for Donald Trump and his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
You continue to make excuses for this man, for his vile behavior. Doesn't that make you just as bad, if not worse?
The protesters shaking cars, breaking taillights.
The mob even followed the Trump supporters to their cars.
We will punch some people in the face. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters. Who ruled it?
These are anti-Donald Trump protesters.
He's bleeding bad. No, he's bleeding bad. He's bleeding bad. He's bleeding bad.
Man viciously beaten, all because he voted for Donald Trump.
Oh shit, he bleeds. Yo.
You know, this is tough stuff. We're fighting a war.
No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Barack Obama had tried to fundamentally transform our country. And I didn't understand yet how far our country had gone, how much Obama had given away our nation.
Taking a look at the labor force participation rate, it's the lowest it's been in decades and has been on a steady decline during the Obama presidency.
Where the country was before Trump got into this race was it was a dismal economy.
We're still living on the Obama economy, and we're in the worst shape we've been at in the entire post-World War II period.
Unemployment was high, people were downtrodden, people were disappointed, and we became the laughing stock of the foreign policy world because we had an American president who was an apologist for leading the greatest country in the world. And what we saw was this president go overseas and start bowing to foreign leaders and being apologetic for having the greatest superpower the world has ever seen.
What we needed was not a litigator, we needed a fighter. We needed someone that understood this is a cultural war, that the left wants to undo our country. They want to take down America.
No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all.
Donald Trump said, "Not on my watch." Now is the time to fight, and Donald Trump was the man to do it.
We don't have victories anymore. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating China? When did we beat Japan at anything? When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems.
The world right now is like, whites are black, Trump's running for president, like, does gravity still work?
You're not going to be president, all right?
Folks, Donald Trump is not a serious person.
That he might be leaving the Republican ticket next year.
I know you don't believe that, but I want to go on.
Let's not mince words. Donald Trump is a bigot and a racist.
I'm sorry, he's a racist.
He's a belligerent, loudmouthed racist.
There is zero chance we'll be seeing you being sworn in on the Capitol steps with your hand on a giant golden Bible.
The very first thing I noticed about Donald Trump was when he came down the escalator and he said, "I'm rich."
I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. And by the way, I'm not even saying that in a brag. That's the kind of mindset, that's the kind of thinking you need for this country.
I'm very, 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 very rich, and I want to show you how to get rich with me.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
So this began as 500 people in a ballroom in Phoenix. And the hotel called us up. And they said, "Please don't do it here. We're going to be swamped. It's going to destroy the building."
And we will make America great again.
It's been amazing. And outside, sadly, we have thousands of people that can't get in. So you know real estate. You know real estate.
We're going to do it. I love you all. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. We're going to do it.
I think in the primaries, the candidates that were fielded by the Republican Party, it was the best group of candidates that I've ever seen run for the Republican nomination. And it's one that Trump was able to dispense with very quickly and I think very easily. And that's because he connected to voters in a way that they didn't.
I was told by everybody, do not go to Iowa. You could never finish even in the top 10. And I said, but I have friends in Iowa. I know a lot of people in Iowa. I think they'll really like me. Let's give it a shot. They said, don't do it. I said, I have to do it. And we finished second. And I want to tell you something. I'm just honored. I'm really honored.
And there's a reason his support collapsed in the final days. You look at all the entrance polls, people decided the last week, last 2 days, last day. They went to Rubio and Cruz.
Donald Trump is the here today, gone tomorrow candidate for president.
Fox News can now project that Donald Trump will win the Republican presidential primary.
Because as entertaining as Donald Trump is a liar.
And which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones, right now, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, the billionaire real estate magnate, will win the South Carolina Republican primary.
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump.
CBS News is projecting that Donald Trump is the winner in the state of Florida.
So here you have two sides within the same party battling over who's going to be right when this is all over.
Your words were, among Hispanics generally, Trump polls only slightly better than cancer. Well, I mean, at least it's slightly better, right?
Trump claimed big wins in the South, a 22-point margin in Alabama, 14-point victories in Tennessee and Georgia, with tighter wins in Arkansas and Virginia.
The RNC has booted National Review from co-sponsoring the Republican debate next month. This after the conservative magazine assembled a group of prominent pundits with a single goal: stopping Donald Trump.
Donald Trump will never be elected president of the United States.
He is not a typical politician. Fans were flooding Trump events, turning out in record numbers.
People there were groupies. They would go to 7, 10, 15, 30 rallies. They'd travel around the country to see him. They would wait in line for 8, 9, 10 hours in the rain, in the snow.
This evening, his last opponent dropped out.
Trump is the Republican Party's presumptive nominee for president.
Donald Trump is, in fact, the party's presumptive nominee.
And I could not be more proud tonight to present to you and to all of America my father and our next president, Donald J. Trump.
Our convention occurs at a moment of crisis for our nation. The attacks on our police and the terrorism of our cities threaten our very way of life. Any politician who does not grasp this danger is not fit to lead our country. The crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end. Beginning on January 20th of 2017, safety will be restored. What about our economy? Again, I will tell you the plain facts that have been edited out of your nightly news and your morning newspaper. Nearly 4 in 10 African American children are living in poverty, while 58% of African American youth are now not employed. 2 million more Latinos are in poverty today than when President Obama took his oath of office less than 8 years ago. Another 14 million people have left the workforce entirely. The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. The American people will come first once again. Big business, elite media, and major donors are lining up behind the campaign of my opponent because they know she will keep our rigged system in place. My message is that things have to change, and they have to change right now. Every day, I wake up determined to deliver a better life for the people all across this nation that have been ignored, neglected, and abandoned. I have visited the laid-off factory workers and the communities crushed by our horrible and unfair trade deals. These are the forgotten men and women of our country, and they are forgotten, but they're not going to be forgotten long. These are people who work hard, but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Unlike the massive crowd at the Trump rally, only 600 people showed up for Hillary Clinton's rally last night in Iowa.
I knew things were changing because I would see the rallies in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania. It's supposed to be a blue wall.
I thought Donald Trump was one of the first politicians in a while who looked at voters and saw them as real people in concrete situations, people with real everyday problems, and who saw them as his fellow Americans. He kind of looked at them as part of a national family.
That's Donald Trump reminding the people of where it used to be a better country, where we had manufacturing, where guys who worked in steel mills and coal plants were heroes of our country. And now under the Obama years, those jobs were decimated. And he promised to bring those manufacturing jobs back because middle America had been left behind.
Today, on a very complicated and very difficult subject, you will get the truth. The fundamental problem with the immigration system in our country is that it serves the needs of wealthy donors, political activists, and powerful politicians. Let me tell you who it does not serve. It does not serve you, the American people. Doesn't serve you. Illegal immigration costs our country more than $113 billion a year. Most illegal immigrants are lower-skilled workers with less education who compete directly against vulnerable American workers. Only the out-of-touch media elites think the biggest problem facing American society today is that there are 11 million illegal immigrants who don't have legal status. To all the politicians, donors, and special interests, hear these words from me and all of you today. There is only one core issue in the immigration debate, and that issue is the well-being of the American people. Build the wall. Build the wall. They will. Oh, we'll build it. We'll build it. Who's gonna pay for it?
You can put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
When Hillary Clinton called our voters and our supporters deplorable, I think it helped change the dynamics of the entire race.
So what does she get out of criticizing a quarter of the country, presumably some of whom she'd love to have vote for her?
We have the support of cops and soldiers, carpenters and welders, the young and the old, and millions of working class families who just want a better future and a good job. These were the people Hillary Clinton so viciously demonized. These were among the countless Americans that Hillary Clinton called deplorable.
What Hillary Clinton has done here is she's created a community.
Our next guests are Trump supporters who are embracing the deplorable label.
We wanted to show everybody that we're not deplorable. We're normal, middle-class women.
We don't win, we lose. We are going to start winning again. We're going to win with everything. We're going to win so much, you are going to get so sick and tired of winning. I say this kiddingly, but I love saying it. You are going to get so tired of winning. You're going to say, please, please, Mr. President, we can't take it anymore. The people of New Mexico cannot take it. You're winning too much. We can't stand it. Please, don't win so much. And I'm going to say, I'm sorry. We're going to keep winning. We are going to make America great again.
New polls just out tonight nationally. Hillary Clinton after the first debate now at 47 to Donald Trump's 42.
Clinton is polling now at 49%, Donald Trump at 44%.
There comes a moment in every great endeavor when success or failure is determined by the decisions you make under duress at a seminal moment. Donald Trump's moment came in October.
Billy Bush weekend was probably the most difficult weekend of the campaign. What was taking place at Trump Tower was the staff there was attempting to manage the president and come up with a solution. Some people told the president to get out of the race, and he was going to go down and have the biggest defeat in our history. But what I knew about Donald Trump was you never back down, you double down.
That 2005 Access Hollywood tape wasn't just lewd remarks. Trump was literally explaining a time-tested strategy for sexual assault.
The swing voters have been these college-educated white women who went for Mitt Romney by 6 points, and in our last poll, went for Hillary Clinton by 25 points. They last night saw nothing to bring them to Donald.
Could I just cut through? I have one thing to say, one thing only. And that is that this race is over.
Basically, this was just going to be a coronation now for Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump had no shot.
An estimated 20,000 people turned out last night at a football stadium in Mobile, Alabama.
NBC News Survey Monkey poll is out today. It puts Hillary Clinton up by 10 points over Donald Trump.
The first exit polls come out, and the margin is so bad that there's basically not enough votes left to go and make it up. We're going to lose everything. And in CNN, you can feel the jubilation that the reporters are having.
You know what we haven't had in a presidential election in a long time? A real landslide. And I don't want to oversell this here, but at least right now, in this moment, we're seeing an interesting possibility in this presidential race.
It was funny because when I saw Florida come in and they refused to call it for Donald Trump, I knew at that moment that CNN didn't want to call it because it would be the end of it all.
The result of the election hasn't been officially declared yet, so I
knew at that moment that the president had won.
I did not think the swamp could be beaten. I did not think that the Hillary Clinton machine could be beaten. I did not think that Donald Trump would beat them. The biggest surprise of the night. But if I had to say secondary to that, it would definitely be the response of all the pundits and the pollsters as they saw their whole brand just melt around them when they were proven 100% false on everything that they had been saying for the last 6 months.
And all of a sudden, by 10:30 at night, I know Trump's going to be the president-elect of the United States. And I've got to go back on CNN. And it was an amazing feeling.
You've won, so act like you've won.
I think Donald Trump is going to go on tonight. I think he's waiting for Hillary Clinton to call him and concede this race. And then he's going to make a very gracious speech which says, I want to be the president of the entire United States. I want to bring everyone together. I don't think it's outrageous for him to wait.
No candidate in modern American politics has ever run a wire-to-wire first-place campaign We went in first place, and we never looked back.
We are going to make this decision now. The Fox News decision desk has called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This means that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States.
There are demonstrations in major American cities across the country tonight over the election of Donald Trump.
Tens of thousands marched in streets across the United States on Saturday. Protests held in big cities such as Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. But in Portland Saturday night, it turned violent.
People filling the streets in America's cities, protesting President-elect Donald Trump.
Crowds set fires, blocked freeways, and gathered at Trump's buildings all across the country.
You're awake, by the way. You're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead and you haven't gone to hell. This is your life now. This is our election now. This is us. This is our country. It's real.
Washington Post is now reporting that a secret CIA report concluded, quote, that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump win the presidency.
The most important thing to understand about what happened in 2016 is that it wasn't about a man, but it was about a message and a platform. Both left and right had betrayed the nation. The GOP didn't understand that Donald Trump won despite the Republican Party, not because of the Republican Party.
When he took this country over on January 20th, 2017, we were in real trouble, and we still are.
I attended the inauguration with my wife, was going to become a citizen just a month later. She had never heard a politician speak like this, and she mentioned that this is going to be a presidency like we'd never seen before. And when you listen to that inauguration speech, you understood that he was getting ready for battle.
We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth.
And after that speech, we got a preview of exactly what the media was going to do in terms of coverage of Donald Trump, in calling it dark, in evoking Nazism, in saying all the most horrible things that you can say about an inauguration speech.
When he said today, America first, it was not just the racial, I shouldn't say racial, the Hitlerian background to it.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
The media can't resist it. Why can they always not resist comparing folks to Nazi Germany or Hitler?
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
We want to hear that message of America first. However, it carries with it overtones from the 1930s when an anti-Semitic movement saying we don't want to get involved in Europe's war. It's the Jews' fault in Germany. The words themselves carry very ugly echoes in our history.
Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining, but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action.
President Trump signing executive orders in his first few days in office.
Just moments ago in the Oval Office, as he did sign two executive orders, one to officially ease the burden on Obamacare.
American worker hiring freeze except the military. What does that mean, Mark?
Tamron, it's about, saying that there should be no more civil servants in the federal government, that they're not going to grow the size of the government with federal workers.
What do you make of the signing of these executive orders and the president withdrawing the United States from TPP?
Well, he's making good on a lot of campaign promises. What he's trying to do here is follow through on a promise to take action on day one.
We're going to move on now to the chaos, confusion, and anger growing in the wake of President Trump's immigration ban.
overnight outrage from coast to coast. This is not about religion. This is about terror and keeping our country safe. There are over 40 different countries worldwide that are majority Muslim that are not affected by this order.
What we did was we focused on, instead of religion, danger. The areas of the world that create danger for us.
Besides the opposition media, now that Donald Trump holds the most powerful seat in the world, he is faced with opposition from all sides. The Democrats, never-Trumpers inside his own party, and the so-called deep state.
You know, people call it the deep state or the administrative state or the entrenched political class. These are the people who are making millions off the political system of the United States. Washington is a swamp, and it's filled with people, Republicans and Democrats, who don't have the country's best interests in mind. And these are the people who oppose Donald Trump.
Because he has his own people working against him. They're not part of the solution. They're part of the cabal, they're part of the swamp, and they're part of the problem.
Trump needed the time to learn how the swamp worked. All of us want the swamp drained, but you cannot drain a swamp without actually knowing how it works first. And that's the same thing with progressivism. You can't pull it out by its root if you don't understand how it got there in the first place.
The Democrats are suffering from a massive identity crisis and haven't been able to get their hands around the fact that they lost to Donald Trump, which has created a political vacuum in this country that the mainstream media has jumped in to fill. And they just can't get over the fact that they lost. So right after the election's over with, we start getting all these stories about Russian collusion.
We can't really see anything of collusion. We are at a point where many people in the American public see this investigation for what it is, a way to take down a president, and if it isn't collusion, they'll pivot to something else that has nothing to do with collusion, and the blind partisans, and particularly people in the media, will just run with that narrative.
They have phony witch hunts going against me. They have everything going. And you know what? All we do is win, win, win.
I don't think the people of the United States wanted an investigation. I think this was an investigation brought on by a conspiracy of people within the entrenched political class in Washington to get rid of Donald Trump. Now that I've been through my own sit-down with the Mueller team, it becomes very obvious to me that this isn't about Russia collusion. It's about getting Donald Trump.
Despite the media's desire to hype the Russian collusion narrative, Donald Trump has kept his focus and has managed to secure a number of important victories in less than 2 years.
If you look at what this president has been able to achieve in the first year, historic tax cut, the repatriation of money sitting overseas, African-American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, record lows because of what this president's policies are.
He stayed laser focused on the things he said he would do, on the tough calls, on the Paris Climate Accord, on the Iran deal, on moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, on staring down the trade agreements that have been terrible for our country, on crushing ISIS.
People didn't understand the importance of small business in this country. For 30 some odd years, nobody had really addressed the needs of these small business owners. Here we had an opportunity to make that change, and these small business owners needed that help to be able to actually make a change for their own businesses as well.
Since the election, we have created 2.4 million new jobs. And something I'm very proud of, African-American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded.
Unemployment for Hispanics hit an all-time record low in June, and new polls showing that Trump's approval rating among Hispanics rising rapidly.
Not only because of the tax cuts, but because of the deregulation that he has forced through the stroke of his pen. He has removed the government boot off a small business's neck. We've seen big companies and small companies alike who are saying, because of the policies of this administration the first year and a half, we're growing our business. Our economy is moving in the right direction. That alone would be enough for any other president to secure a re-election right now. You couple that with the success that he's had in getting a Supreme Court justice on the court, more federal bench justices than any president in his tenure at this point ever in history. You look at the Conservative Heritage Foundation, they say,
in his first year, Donald Trump has done about 64% of our mandate for leadership. So we were quite encouraged, and for anyone who doubts whether or not we have a conservative president, we in fact do.
I've been astonished to watch what it looks like when you see the speed of business versus the speed of government, the speed of action versus the speed of promises. Donald Trump is a businessman who has unleashed the climate of business in this country. He has said, I believe you know how to spend your money better than the government does. I want to cut your taxes so you can invest in your own lives. You can invest in your employees. You can invest in your business. I'm going to reduce regulations so that small business that doesn't have an army of accountants and lawyers and litigators and lobbyists, they're on a level playing field with those big guys that play very well and cozy inside the rigged system. But Donald Trump understands he wants equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. We can unleash the engines of capitalism. He has unleashed the miracle of free market economics because as a businessman, he understands that that's how you unleash the promise of America.
Today I want to talk about how to grow the African-American middle class and to provide a new deal for Black America.
We are now seeing unemployment rates that are below 4%. And in fact, if you even look more specifically at unemployment rates amongst Latinos and amongst Blacks, it is now at historic record levels in terms of lows. This is unbelievable. This administration, frankly, has done more for the Hispanic community, for the Black community, than probably most other administrations have in the past.
Well, at the beginning of the Obama years, especially within the Black community, we were all excited that America had proven that it was able to get past this racist background. And we were excited about being able to elect the first Black president. We thought for sure he would do things specifically to help the intrinsic and intransigent problems within the Black community, the high unemployment rate, the Black-on-Black crime.
Shooting violence has gotten so bad in Chicago that gunfights are breaking out now at existing crime scenes. And even with police in close proximity.
We got shots fired over here.
And then as he got settled into office, the cloud of disappointment began to settle in within the Black community. Members of the Black Caucus could not get a meeting with the first Black president, never addressed the Black unemployment rate, and that's when the bottom fell out of our support for President Obama.
And one of the things, though, unfortunately, under the Obama administration, truly people believed that the American dream was dead.
What the Black community is looking for is a reason to change their habits. And I think that's part of the reason that President Donald Trump came onto the scene. Entrepreneurship. That's the bedrock, that's the gateway drug into the Black community, is through our entrepreneurs. And if we make sure we have a vibrant entrepreneurship class within the Black community, that's going to go a long ways to solving a lot of the turmoil you see in the inner cities, number one. Then number two, education. Because if you have a good education and you're optimistic and hopeful, now you go to school, get education, whether it's college or vocational, then you have a flourishing entrepreneurs class that has a job waiting for you. They need you because their businesses are growing so fast.
But now what we're hearing again, that optimism is sky high. People are investing back in their businesses because they believe that the American dream is now achievable once again.
That deal is grounded in 3 promises: safe communities, great education, and high-paying jobs.
And the moment you reach out to them and you start taking them seriously as businessmen, you're going to see actual conservatism come into the picture, actual ideas come into the picture.
I will also propose tax holidays for inner-city investment, a new tax incentive to get foreign companies to relocate in blighted American neighborhoods, and they will do that. It will be worthwhile. It's called incentive. They will do it.
Uprooting progressivism and getting it out of our country so we're not on the brink of democratic socialism.
I will produce, and I will get others to produce, and we know for a fact it doesn't work with the Democrats.
There's a lot at stake at this moment right now. And if Donald Trump chooses capitalism and chooses that fight at this moment, I think you change the entire trajectory of this country from what progressives have done the last 100 years.
They want to kill not only our civilians, all over the world. And it's going to be stopped. It's going to be stopped. Somebody criticized me the other day because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped.
The most underreported story of 2017 was the decimation of the caliphate that is ISIS in Syria and Iraq. 98% of that caliphate has now been destroyed. President Trump, as a candidate, said that we'll bomb the hell out of them, and he got ridiculed for that. Well, where are we now? We see a caliphate that's decimated, yet most people wouldn't even know that 98% of that caliphate is destroyed because simply it's not being reported.
There have been hundreds of modern jihadi organizations that wished to bring back the caliphate that was dissolved after World War I. But every single one of them failed. All of them failed until a group called ISIS reestablished the caliphate.
President Obama warns that the fight against Islamic State will take time. The president went to the Pentagon for a briefing with the country's top military commanders. He called the fight against Islamic State a generational struggle.
This will not be quick. This is a long-term campaign. ISIL is opportunistic and it is nimble. In many places in Syria and Iraq, including urban areas, it's dug in among innocent civilian populations. It will take time to root them out.
Meaning your children, my grandchildren, would have to fight these jihadis decades from now. Donald J. Trump and his administration, with the focus on the physical caliphate, compressed Obama's generational war into the span of 4 months until the caliphate was no more.
We've made tremendous strides, obviously, in Syria with ISIS. We've taken back virtually all of the caliphate, all of the land. Same thing in Iraq, and we're making tremendous strides. It's sort of the unwritten story right now.
President Trump praising the news that ISIS has lost 98% of the territory it once held, with half of those victories coming since he took office. Just last year, ISIS controlled an area in Iraq and Syria the size of Ohio. Look at that on the map. Take a good look at it. And now we're going to show you what exists today. This is the remaining strongholds that are there, a small area along the border. So, big accomplishment.
I'll never forget seeing the black flag of ISIS fly over Fallujah, Ramadi, Samarra, other towns that Americans had fought to liberate. And when we saw that, the images were jarring, but the response was infantile. Barack Obama called them the JV team.
In January, President Obama told the New Yorker magazine's David Remnick that ISIS, which was then still considered a part of al-Qaeda fighting in Syria, was like a JV basketball team.
We're not here to play games. We're not here to build schools. We're not here to hand out soccer balls. We're here to put a rifle round between the eyes of ISIS, to drop a Moab on their face and make sure they never come back to this earth. And here we are now, and the ISIS caliphate has been destroyed. That's the kind of leadership I want, is a commander-in-chief laser focused on destroying the enemy. Where are the front page headlines? Where are the deep dive stories about the lives that were saved? Where's the talk of the courage of Iraqis, of Kurds, of Syrians, of Americans, putting their life on the line so that ISIS dirtbags can be put into the dirt? Of course, those stories aren't told, because those stories would amplify the success of a commander-in-chief that this media hates.
The Iranian regime is the leading state sponsor of terror. It exports dangerous missiles, fuels conflicts across the Middle East, and supports terrorist proxies and militias such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
The Iran deal is another example of the president making a promise. He said that this is the worst deal in history, that we're going to get out.
Barack Obama was more than foolish. He was reckless, ideologically reckless in America's security in pursuing that deal. They were foolish enough to think that if we gave the Iranians billions of dollars of pallets of cash, the Ayatollahs over there, the radical Islamists, would give up their nuclear weapons, stop their ambitions to chant death to America and wipe Israel off the map. Except everything we've seen since we signed that horrific deal is they've only funded their military operations more. They've only exported more Islamic terrorism in the region. They've only sought to expand their influence, undermine America, and undermine Israel in the process. And thank God, we have a president who stepped up and said, that's not a deal worth making, let alone a deal worth keeping.
America will not be held hostage to nuclear blackmail. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction. And we will not allow a regime that chants death to America to gain access to the most deadly weapons on earth. Today's action sends a critical message. The United States no longer makes empty threats. When I make promises, I keep them.
The new provocation from North Korea, what could be the most dangerous yet, a new missile launched being called a breakthrough, a successful test of an intercontinental ballistic missile, possibly capable of reaching Alaska. North Korea's official statement celebrating the launch, promising to root out what they see as the U.S. threat.
If you remember August of 2017, we were on the verge of World War III. North Korea was lobbing missiles over Japan, was threatening Guam, had nuclear capabilities, and the president said that Kim Jong-un and the North Korean people will be met with a fire and fury like the world has never seen.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea.
The media was apocalyptic, said you can't speak to North Korean leaders like that. You can't use that sort of language. You're going to get us into a war. And instead, it was a language, it turns out, that Kim Jong-un actually understood. And he began to acquiesce, and he began to stop testing missiles.
North Korea will not find security and respect through threats and illegal weapons. We will work with our friends and allies to stand up to this behavior, and we will redouble our efforts toward a more robust international non-proliferation regime that all countries have responsibilities to meet.
They accelerated toward a nuclear bomb under the Obama administration because they saw it as their opportunity. Ironically, that's the number one issue Barack Obama said he was handing to Donald Trump to solve on the world stage. And what has President Trump done? He's forged a path to solve it. But he didn't play by the consensus games of Washington, D.C. Never once did intelligentsia crowd say, you know what you should do? You should tell Kim Jong-un fire and fury is coming his way. You should tell Kim Jong-un he's going to get a bloody nose if he tries it again. You should ramp up troop deployments, ramp up military exercises, maximize the pressure, utilize China to put pressure on North Korea. And here we are. We're getting actual action on the Korean Peninsula.
And now we have all sides talking, and people are talking about Donald Trump, of all people, winning a Nobel Peace Prize.
Republican Congressman Luke Messer launching an effort to nominate President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
That could end up being his legacy. That could end up being his biggest accomplishment as president if he is actually able to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula.
In the Kate Steinle murder case, the illegal immigrant Garcia Zarate, who killed Kate Steinle on that pier in San Francisco, was acquitted just a short time ago of murder and manslaughter charges.
When Donald Trump took that escalator down in Trump Tower, as soon as he honed in on immigration, I knew that he was speaking to an America that had been told that they weren't allowed to talk about these issues, that they were verboten, that they had to be censored in public discourse for the sake of social cohesion. Donald Trump was having none of it. Donald Trump stood on that stage and said some of the most extraordinary and true and revelatory things about mass migration.
But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East.
Let me tell you something the mainstream media will never tell you tonight. It was San Francisco's sanctuary city policies that killed Kate Steinle.
Our campaign was outlined immigration, and that means stopping illegal immigrants from coming into the country. The notion of a wall on the southern border, which had been proposed years before that the Senate had voted on, including Hillary.
You know, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary.
Was now a controversial idea. It's absurd. When we went out to the American people and the president started talking about bringing our jobs back, under the Obama years, those jobs were decimated, and he promised to bring those manufacturing jobs back because middle America had been left behind.
We will bring our jobs back, Sean. We're going to bring our jobs, as sure as you're sitting there, we are going to bring our jobs back into this country for the first time.
If we don't have a wall, we don't have a country. And if you don't have a border, you will have a perpetual problem exploited by the worst of the worst, by MS-13, by drug runners, by sex traffickers, by violent gangs. All of these groups who have created problems across our country that then left-wing politicians give sanctuary to.
Reaffirming its reputation as the sanctuary city of all sanctuary cities, San Francisco is doubling down on its defiance of federal immigration law.
To me, the border wall is as close to an immigration litmus test as there exists. Find me a politician and ask them what they think about the border wall. And if they say, well, maybe we need it, maybe we don't, they still don't get the idea of immigration today. They still don't get the idea of a nation state. They still don't understand how central it is to the future of our country.
People who really don't believe America should have borders, people who see immigration as simply a factor of production, who see immigrants as future Social Security taxpayers and nothing else, people who don't send their kids to public schools where 14 or 17 languages have to be taught, and the Latin kings are battling it out with MS-13 over the turf and driving out African Americans whose ancestors have been there for 100 years.
America has never been a race, a gender, a social class. It is a set of ideas that we have perpetuated, but it starts with the rule of law. Without the rule of law, everything else falls apart. Without the rule of law starting on our border, we don't have a country.
When I talk with a lot of my friends in the Congressional Black Caucus privately, I chastise them. How can you be black and you're supporting amnesty for those in the country illegally, when then at the same time you complain about the high unemployment rate in the black community? So your solution is to bring in cheap labor? Really? The black folks I talk to do not support amnesty for illegal. Even most of the black liberal Democratic staffers I know and talk to, privately, they don't agree with it, but they are terrified to go public and say they disagree with it. Why pay an American engineer $150,000 a year when you can import them and pay them $80,000 a year? We need to get back to putting Americans first and not worry about trying to be president of the world, which we had 8 years of that. Now we have a president that's singularly focused on, if it's good for America, then it's good for the world. That's a total paradigm shift. What President Trump is doing with this issue of illegal immigration is resonating in the black community. What we have to do is do a better job of giving these people a microphone to talk about how they feel about that issue.
I don't believe there's a bigger geopolitical issue that threatens American security directly than the rise of China.
America is the most powerful nation the world has ever seen, on every metric. Nevertheless, there is one nation that has both the desire and the potential to displace us. They see their culture as better than anybody else's, and they see the last 100 years as an anomaly, as a humiliation by the West.
What we have today is a modern-day economic superpower. The Chinese today are becoming more communist. They're becoming more oppressive at home. They're becoming more expansionist internationally. China's goal is to diminish the United States at all costs because China's rise and ultimately China's world domination is to make sure that the United States is defeated. And they're doing everything in their power by using information means as well as supporting America's enemies, stealing America's technology. The amounts that have been stolen by the Chinese have just been extraordinary, in the trillions of dollars of valuable U.S. technology. And they're using that technology to build up their military as well as their diplomatic, economic, and intelligence infrastructures.
Once you work in the White House, once you have access to the intelligence that the most powerful intelligence community in the world can provide, you tend to see things differently. I came to realize that the only truly strategic long-term threat that America faces is in fact from China. China has a plan to displace us by the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Revolution in 2049.
2049 is 100th anniversary of Chinese People's Republic of China. In the 2021, they want territorial integrity, which means they want Taiwan, they want South China Sea. And then in 2049, they want to overtake the United States.
The flashpoints between the United States and China are clearly in the Pacific. The South China Sea, which sees $5 trillion in trade annually, has been militarized and literally taken over by the Chinese in a covert operation to build small islets throughout the sea and begin militarizing them with missiles. Any of these three flashpoints could erupt into a regional conflict unless the United States takes major action to push back against this Chinese hegemonism.
Mr. Xi, for years, he was a very cautious guy. He understood how to climb up in China. To climb up in the communist ladder, you have to be harmless. People are not afraid of you. You're not in anybody's way. But when he got to power, now he's showing his true color. We see him using Mao's language. We see him raise issues like what Mao raised.
Xi Jinping comes from a veteran family. Both his parents are communist high-ranking leaders. He grew up in that environment. So when he comes to power, he has a mission to defend, to restore, revive the Communist Party, make it become a stronger, glorify the Communist Party. China is definitely a totalitarian regime because it's control everything. China is control everybody's thinking, everybody's social behavior, and everybody's speech, and not a single regime in the history can have such a total control over its people. The totalitarian machine, the whole country is a police state.
They have developed a strategy, the One Belt, One Road strategy, and they've developed a doctrine called unrestricted warfare to undermine us in indirect ways, specifically economic warfare and political warfare and the development of military technologies that leapfrog over conventional military technology development.
It's actually a stalking horse for the Chinese ideology of Chinese communism, socialism with Chinese characteristics. They're building up countries around the world, and with that comes the Chinese economic model as well as the Chinese authoritarian and communist system. And the United States, again, is at a loss to try and counter this. China basically has no oil, and therefore they're heavily dependent on Middle Eastern oil, so they're looking for ways to control the oil coming out of the Persian Gulf and the Middle East and make sure that they can secure that.
I think President Trump perhaps is one of the smartest presidents we have. And his engagement with China, I think as a businessman, first he understands personal relationship. He made President Xi said one thing, is that the United States of America have 1,000 reasons to be friendly to each other, have 0 reason not to be friendly. Actually, we have plenty of reason to be not friendly. But President Trump established a personal relationship. In the Chinese politics, if you have a personal relationship, you can always, have some leeway. On the other hand, if you don't stand firm for your national interests, they despise you. So actually, President Trump won a lot of respect from the Chinese leaders and Chinese people.
We've lost 70,000 factories since China joined the World Trade Organization, and you've seen that, you've heard about it. 70,000. The World Trade Organization, another one of our disasters. But this election, The American people voted to end the theft of American prosperity. They voted to bring back their jobs and to bring back their dreams into our country. That's why I'm here today. In just a few moments, I will be signing a Buy American and Hire American executive order. You haven't heard about that in a long time in this country. With this action, we are sending a powerful signal to the world. We're going to defend our workers, protect our jobs, and finally, put America first.
Donald Trump was one of the first politicians to recognize the threat from China. He broke with the business community and that he wasn't going to go along with business as usual by ignoring China's aggression in the South China Sea and other areas, ignoring China's human rights abuses. Donald Trump has made a sea change in the U.S. approach to China. He's made China the top threat, along with Russia. He has made protecting American economic security one of the highest priorities. Again, this trade and interaction in the past was based on the false notion that trading with China would have a moderating influence on its behavior, and President Trump was the first to recognize that this has totally failed and that a much tougher approach is needed.
We're going to be fulfilling another campaign promise by taking firm steps to ensure that we protect the intellectual property of American companies and, very importantly, of American workers.
No, mark my words, if the 21st century is not an American century, the 21st century will not be a free century. And I'll tell you this, the Chinese, the communists, believe the future is theirs, that their economy and its central planning is the future, that their military will eventually overtake America's, and they do not believe that our will is strong enough to confront them. They believe America is a declining power, that free peoples and capitalism inevitably implodes, and that central planning and dictatorship and communism is the way of the people. If we do not stare down China, not just on trade, but on their military ambitions, the 21st century could be a Chinese century, and that means it sure is not a free one. The deplorables know that they've been doing the heavy lifting for a long time. They're the guys from the small towns across America whose parents have the 9-to-5 jobs, make just enough to get them off to college, but infuse in them the values that matter the most. Love your country, be willing to fight for things greater than yourself, earn a paycheck because there's dignity in work, and raise a family that perpetuates that into the next generation that loves America. So the deplorables said, the way I give to my country is to give the way the previous generation did.
In November, we have so much actually at stake, so much to lose. The Democrats, they actually are saying, vote for us and we will raise your taxes.
What can you do but raise taxes?
You're used to hearing the Democrats say, vote for us, we'll give you free stuff here and free stuff there. Our small business owners right now, their optimism is sky high because they believe that these are the tax cuts that they're going to be facing in the future. But I'll tell you now that we're hearing a little bit of concern now because they're asking the question, what happens if they go away?
You raised the issue of taxes. Trump raised that issue. Let's talk about it.
What's too high for the top personal rate?
It's not about a number. That's what negotiations are all about.
What rate? Yes, we are going to end these. We'll come up with that rate, but it'll be a damn lot higher than it is right now.
This is Armageddon.
Is 50% obviously too high?
Look, there was a time in a very prosperous America where the top marginal rate was well above 50%.
Previously, you'd been asked if a 90% marginal rate is certainly too high, and you said no. So how high are you willing to go?
Not one Democrat voted to cut taxes. Not one.
And just as I promised the American people from this podium 11 months ago, we enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history.
The November 2018 elections are absolutely critical to see this president's agenda continue to move forward. This election, if it is an election about the success that our country is facing, Donald Trump wins and the Republicans keep and expand their majorities both in the Senate and the House. If this is a localized election where the Democratic candidates are running away from Nancy Pelosi and the leadership of the Democratic Party, then the Democrats are going to do very well.
We have come up with a lot of solutions, but we have Democrats that don't want to approve anything because that's probably, they think, bad for the election that's coming up.
What Democrats are very good at doing is they go into their districts, they campaign and say one thing, they come to Washington, D.C., and they do the exact opposite. That's what is on trial. That is what we are talking about for the November election.
Donald Trump is definitely on the ballot in every race across the country. You're either with an agenda, a reform agenda of Washington that is with the people to make government smaller and more effective and to return more money to the pockets of the American taxpayer, or you're with those in the Beltway that want to grow government, grow the size of its regulation, and to keep imposing itself on our lives.
Tell me what the Democrats are running on. What's their platform relative to the black community? Just think about the impact of voting Democrat and having several prominent black liberals chairing major committees. If you don't think elections matter, all I say is when you wake up this morning, think of Chairman Maxine Waters chairing the Financial Services Committee. That should scare you to vote Republican right there.
I don't think there's been a midterm election this important in my lifetime because the Democrats want to take us back to taxes, into the regulatory state, and largely the politicization of everything, okay? One of the reasons the economy is doing well now is because the president is getting the boot of government off the necks of business people and farmers and people that make things, grow things, and build things.
And the government released its gross domestic product report for the second quarter this morning. It showed the U.S. economy grew 4.1% from April through June. That's the best showing since 2014.
The Democratic Party of America have wasted the first year and a half of the Trump presidency attacking him on nonsensical issues because they think, firstly, they control the media. They think, secondly, they control the culture. And so their ideas will pervade, their ideas will filter down necessarily no matter what. They don't rule the roost. They have no answers. So they resorted to racist and xenophobe and all these other things.
The Democrats have nothing to run on in November. What platform do they have? Are they going to vote on let's bring ISIS back? Let's get rid of the 5 million job bonuses that have been created by the tax reform? Shall we not build the wall? They can't run on this. The 2016 election was a peaceful political revolution, and it was historic.
I have a whole list of accomplishments that the group behind me have done in terms of this administration and this Congress, but you've heard it before. We are making America great again.
But 2018 is even more important than the election of the president. The whole Make America Great Again agenda relies upon 7 more years of this administration being able to bring us back to where we should be. So yes, without a doubt, this election cycle is about the highest stakes possible for our nation.
There is a lot at stake in November for the American public, and it really comes down to one question, which is, who do you actually best believes deserves to make the choice for you? Do you make the choice for yourself, or do you allow the government to actually make the choice for you?
2018 is another election about Donald Trump. What they want to do is shut up the deplorables. They want to shut you up because you know what? They're scared of him. They are scared of what he's done. They're scared of the economy that he's created. It scares them that our allies in the world love us and trust us more than ever because they were supposed to hate this president, according to the elite media. They are terrified of President Trump because they're terrified of you and your values.
There's a new Gallup poll that shows President Trump's rating are on the rise, and 90%, in fact, of his party supports the president. That's the second highest rating in modern history for the GOP.
What is glaringly obvious is that the left and the opposition party in the media, they do not have any answers against the Make America Great Again agenda. They don't have any policy solutions. They know that Trump is on the rise out there in the polls because he's doing what he was elected to do. He's delivering jobs, he's securing the border, even his foreign policy, probably the greatest foreign policy we've seen in decades. 2018, therefore, represents a vote for Donald Trump or a vote for impeachment of Donald Trump, because they cannot defeat this agenda at the ballot box.
Impeach 45! Impeach 45!
If the Democrats win the midterms, they are going to go after Donald Trump for impeachment.
The only thing they can run on is hatred and the impeachment of the president. It is a foregone conclusion that if they lose the House and the Senate, impeachment proceedings will begin almost instantly.
We have some real big issues that we're going to be losing on. One is infrastructure, which was another big campaign promise. Building the wall is going to be imperiled. And depending on what happens in the Senate, the whole judicial nomination could come to a complete and grinding stop. We're going to have some Supreme Court vacancies that are going to determine the future of this country for the next 50 to 60 years. Those are critical nominations, and they need to get confirmed by the Senate when they're made. And if we lose, if the Democrats take the Senate as well, we're going to lose all those judicial nominations.
And that's why we must do everything in our power to block this appointment. Let's take a page out of Mitch McConnell's book and not have a vote on this until the midterm elections.
If they take the House, we will have a divided, impotent government where nothing gets accomplished. It will be ugly and horrible, even beyond the ludicrous and dishonest impeachment hearings, which manifestly corrupt Democrats will be conducting in the full light of day, with everyone knowing that it's purely a partisan exercise.
I don't respect this president. I don't trust this president. He's not working in the best interest of the American people. His motives and his actions are contemptible, and I will fight every day until he is impeached.
We have to keep the House, because if you listen to Maxine Waters, she goes around saying, we will impeach him. We will impeach him. Then people said, but he hasn't done anything wrong.
It's time for his agenda to be enacted fully. And we need the midterm elections to stay with the Republicans for that agenda to continue. Otherwise, you're going back to more regulation, more taxes, and more state control from an Obama-Clinton approach to government.
Going out in 2018 is like going out in 2016 or going out in 2020. This is a referendum as to whether or not the forgotten man will be remembered and whether or not the deplorables will still be heard. And whether or not we live in a system where a duly elected president is allowed to do his job.
The president is unstoppable. What he did when he ran for president wasn't done for money and wasn't done for fame. He will never give up, but he's only one man. For the last 30 years, our nation has been covered in an ice blanket of political correctness that froze solid the media, the arts, and politics. We allowed that blanket to fall. But then, 2 years ago, along came a man, the kryptonite of political correctness.
I will always put America first.
And like an ice-breaking ship, he slammed into that ice and broke a pathway and freed that sea lane up. But if you understand the physics of ice breaking, when that tungsten hull rides down on that ice and breaks it free, if you don't have a flotilla of ships that comes in right behind the icebreaker, in real life what happens? The ice comes around the bow, around the hull of the ship, and then almost instantaneously re-knits itself and closes off that waterway. America must create the flotilla. Every single person who is proud of what has been achieved must come to be part of that flotilla and to be what the military calls a force multiplier for the president. The stakes of the next election are even bigger than the one that changed the face of the nation.
So that's what it's about, guys. We gotta win this, and it's gonna take all of us. Honestly, you know, you don't think a midterm election's that important, but this one sure is. And we've just got to do it again. Got to do it again. Who thought we were going to win in 2016? And look what happened, and we can do it again. So I thank you all for coming. Keep tuned, like I said, as to what we do in November. Probably it'll just be election parties. December will be Bill of Rights, and we'll let you know where and when. And I thank you all for coming. Do take the stuff there. If you can't use it, I'm sure somebody you know can. And the 1639 things are in the back. This is a bipartisan issue, the gun rights, so talk to your Democrat friends too, and maybe you'll find out that they're moderate Democrats and want things to stay where they are. So again, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.